Hey, greetings. Welcome back to my channel. Seems like we've got a lot of winter weather on the horizon, and so we're seeing a lot of chatter, a lot of concern, and perhaps maybe a bit of overreacting as well. Um, of course, my hometown of Chicago has plenty of snow removal equipment and hence the capacity to handle severe winter weather. But the cities that I have spent most of my adult life in the southeastern US are rather notorious for an inadequate winter storm response. Hence the mad rush to the grocery store to purchase the needed eggs, bread, and milk whenever snow is in the forecast. So, why are eggs, bread, and milk so coveted during winter storms? These are considered staple foods because together they cover a broad spectrum of macronutrients and micronutrients, even if they're not perfectly balanced. So let's dive into a nutrition focused breakdown of these foods and why everyone seems to focus on them during winter storms for preparation. Before we begin, let's review the essential macronutrients that constitute the human diet. That is carbohydrates, which is approximately 50% of the diet, lipids and fats at 30%, and protein at 20%. Let's also remember the importance of fiber in the diet as well, and which is also generally considered a macronutrient, although it's not really a major source of calories or energy. It is crucial for maintaining essential gut motility and proper digestion, as well as overall health. It's also probably one of the major nutrients that is often neglected in many people's diets. We should also not forget the importance of micronutrients as well, that is, vitamins and minerals, in maintaining proper metabolism and overall health. So, the first food we're going to look at, let's look at obviously, we've got eggs, bread, and milk. So let's start off by looking at eggs. So eggs contain 2 out of the 3 macronutrients. That is, they contain protein and lipids. There's about 6 to 7 grams per large egg of protein. In fact, the proteins in egg white, such as albumin, contains all of the essential amino acids and are used by nutrition scientists as reference protein to assess overall protein quality in other foods. Eggs are also a very rich source of the amino acid leucine. This is a branched chain amino acid that is important for muscle protein synthesis in the mTOR pathway. Eggs are also a very good source of lipids with about 5 grams per fat per egg, 5 grams of fat per egg. And so these fats are mostly in the form of triglycerides and contain significant amounts of phospholipids, such as phosphatidylcholine. So phosphatidylcholine is an important signaling molecule with some other like phosphatidylethanolamine and phosphatidylinositol, and these are commonly associated with cell membranes, so they are critical for membrane development in your cells. There's also a lot of carbohydrates in egg. There's not a lot of carbohydrates in egg, usually about less than 1 gram, but bread and milk will generally be a better source of carbohydrates. Bread is mostly carbohydrate in its starch content. Eggs are also an excellent source of all 4 fat-soluble vitamins. So these are vitamin A, D, E, and K. And as well as the water-soluble vitamins, there's several of these, mainly B vitamins, such as riboflavin, that's vitamin B2, pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, folate, vitamin B9, as well as cobalamin, vitamin B12. These B vitamins play a significant role in the enzymes associated with glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, and these are the central points of human metabolism. Eggs are also a very good source of water-soluble ions or minerals. And so these include iron, phosphorus, selenium, and zinc. Iron's involved in, of course, oxygen transport in hemoglobin, as well as cellular respiration in the electron transport chain. And phosphorus is an essential mineral that's necessary for ATP structure. That's the energy currency of cells. And it's also a critical component of DNA and RNA in the phosphodiester bonds that hold those nucleic acids together. Selenium is a vital mineral that actually helps protect cells from damage due to oxidative stress. And so it boosts the immune system, it supports thyroid function, it aids in DNA synthesis, and it's critical for reproduction. And of course, zinc is an essential trace mineral that's crucial for immune system function, protein DNA synthesis, wound healing, as well as enzyme activity. So eggs also contain other bioactive compounds such as choline, which is critical for membranes and neurotransmitters, as well as lutein and zeaxanthin, which is critical. These are important for eye health, so will give you good eyesight or maintain good eyesight, I should say. So that's eggs. Now let's look at bread. And so when looking at bread, try to consider enriched or whole grain bread as opposed to the more processed white bread. This will be healthier and contain higher amounts of fiber, which we talked about earlier. The dominant macronutrient in bread is, of course, carbohydrates, and this is in the form of mostly starch, such as amylose and amylopectin. Carbohydrates are your primary energy source. So to maintain adequate energy levels that are needed for things like shoveling snow, sledding, snowball fights, generally having fun during winter weather, bread is going to be a very good food source to consume. Bread also has a fairly low fat content with less than about 2 grams per slice. As with eggs, bread is also a good source of B vitamins. And again, these B vitamins are very good for energy and metabolism through most of our metabolic pathways. The primary B vitamins in bread, and especially a lot of these are in enriched breads, they've been enriched with B vitamins. So the primary B vitamins are going to be thiamine, which is vitamin B1, riboflavin is vitamin B2, niacin, vitamin B3, as well as folate, vitamin B9. Bread also contains very important minerals. Iron, so it's often fortified in bread, magnesium, selenium, and manganese. Now, magnesium is an essential mineral that supports over 300 biochemical reactions. A lot of people don't think about magnesium, but this is involved in things like energy production, muscle, nerve function, blood pressure regulation, and even involved in bone health. Key benefits include improved sleep, reduced anxiety, migraine relief, as well as cardiovascular support. A magnesium deficiency will cause fatigue, nausea, and cramping. While excess intake could cause diarrhea, so again, you do need to consume these, but you also want to make sure and not overconsume as well. Manganese is an essential trace mineral that's vital for human health. And so this acts as a coenzyme in metabolism, bone formation, immune system function, as well as blood clotting. Now, a major value in breads is its dietary fiber content, especially whole grain breads. Dietary fiber consists primarily of soluble and insoluble carbohydrates like cellulose and hemicellulose, but also it includes lignin that holds that cellulose together, pectins, gums, mucilages, as well as resistant starches. The insoluble fiber is important for gut health and motility, while the soluble fibers are important for glycemic control. And when we say glycemic, that means control of your blood pressure or your blood sugar, I should say. Yeah, glycemic hyperglycemia would be high blood sugar. Bread also contains a pretty moderate amount of protein, about 3 to 6 grams per slice of bread. And so the primary proteins in bread are going to be gliadin and glutenin. These are the two major components of gluten. And this is necessary to hold things together, for example, when we knead the bread. It's usually not a problem for most people, but if you do have celiac disease or gluten insensitivity, you may want to watch this very closely because, of course, in celiac disease, bread actually becomes pathogenic and not nutritive. This is due to a biochemical defect that provides for an autoimmune response to gliadin. That's the gluten peptide in wheat, barley, and rice. What happens here is tissue transglutaminase, that's an enzyme, modifies gliadin. This leads to immune activation, which results in the destruction of the intestinal villi that lines the small intestine. And so this will lead to atrophy of the villi, which causes a decreased absorptive surface area, a loss of brush border enzymes, as well as generalized malabsorption in your gut. It can also lead to a decreased absorption of all macronutrients, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, because many of these are absorbed in the small intestine. Bread actually becomes inflammatory, malabsorptive, and actively damaging. Micronutrients can also be affected, and this can lead to a decrease in the absorption of iron, which causes anemia, folate, which could lead to neural tube defects. If you're pregnant, it could affect your fetus, causing birth defects. Could lead to a decrease in vitamin B12, as well as calcium and vitamin D, which could cause problems with bones and teeth. Last but not least, let's look at milk. Milk does the body good. Milk contains all macronutrients. That's carbs, lipid, and protein. The primary carbohydrate in milk is going to be lactose. And so there's about 12 grams of lactose per cup. So lactose is commonly called milk sugar. And so lactose is a disaccharide that consists of glucose and galactose. Milk also has a very good protein content. That's about 8 grams per cup. And so 80% of the protein in milk is going to be high quality casein. And so about 20% is going to be a protein called whey. And whey is, of course, the liquid byproduct of cheese or yogurt production. And so this consists of water, proteins such as albumin and globulin, lactose, and minerals. It's also pretty popular as a protein supplement to increase muscle strength, aid in weight loss, as well as boosting nutrient intake. So there's about 8 grams of lipid per cup, assuming we have whole milk. You can, of course, get low-fat milk as well. And so the lipids mainly include a combination of both saturated as well as unsaturated fatty acids. So there's a little bit of both in there, as well as far as the fat content goes. Let's look at some of the micronutrients. And so if we look at the minerals, we've got calcium as well as vitamin D. That's the fat-soluble vitamin. Calcium and vitamin D actually work hand in hand for strong bones and teeth. Milk will also contain phosphorus, magnesium, and potassium. Now, potassium is a vital mineral and an electrolyte that regulates heartbeat, muscle contractions, nerve signals, and fluid balance. The key benefits of potassium include managing blood pressure, reducing kidney stone risk, as well as supporting bone health. In addition to that vitamin D, milk is also a good source of fat-soluble vitamin A, and this is a good nutrient essential for vision, especially your night vision, as well as immune system function, skin health, and cellular growth. I've also got a nice video on vitamin A that's posted in my YouTube channel. You can watch that as well. Milk also contains healthy amounts of vitamin B2, riboflavin, vitamin B12, cobalamin, and these are both essential for metabolism. But of course, the eggs, bread, milk staple works only if all three foods are digestible and absorbable. Similar to celiac disease, lactose intolerance knocks out one entire pillar of that model, but it does so in very different biochemical ways. And so lactose intolerance involves the loss of milk as a usable energy and calcium source. This is due to a deficiency in an enzyme called lactase. It's also called beta-galactosidase. And this is an enzyme in the intestinal brush border, so lactose is not hydrolyzed into glucose and galactose. This will result in undigested lactose remaining in the intestinal lumen, which creates an osmotic effect, leading to water retention and diarrhea. Colonic bacteria also will ferment lactose into hydrogen gas, carbon dioxide, and even methane. And of course, this can result in symptoms of bloating, cramping, and undesirable flatulence or farting. Metabolically, this causes a loss of carbohydrates since there's no glucose galactose absorption from the milk, and we have reduced substrates for glycolysis. So we've got less energy in the form of ATP from less glycolysis. Galactose metabolism is also bypassed, and this leads to less galactose and a decrease in metabolic flux through the Lelore pathway that causes a decrease in glucose 1-phosphate. And so your energy yield is reduced as milk carbohydrates become unusable. And so that's about 50% of the calories that are present in milk. Now, these primary micronutrient reductions from lactose intolerance are going to be focused on reduced calcium and vitamin D, so again, bone loss, as well as riboflavin, vitamin B2, and cobalamin, vitamin B12. Eggs and bread really don't fully compensate in lactose intolerance because eggs have no calcium or carbohydrates. Yeah, nobody really eats the eggshell, which is calcium carbonate. I don't really like to eat that. That's kind of hard. Now, bread also has lower calcium bioavailability, so there is a long-term risk of osteopenia or osteoporosis if not compensated. If the milk is removed as a carbohydrate or a calcium or vitamin D protein source, then the eggs, bread, milk model will shift toward more carb-heavy and protein-fat imbalance unless alternatives are added. But overall, for most people, barring certain specific diseases such as celiac disease or lactose intolerance, this trio of eggs, bread, and milk works very well together nutritionally, at least in the short term while you're shut down for a couple of days or a week. Eggs, bread, and milk will provide all three macronutrients: carbohydrates in bread and milk, protein in the eggs and milk, and fat in the eggs and milk as well. And of course, they are excellent sources of several key micronutrients, as we've discussed: B vitamins for energy and metabolism, calcium and phosphorus for bone health, iron for oxygen transport, and choline for membrane and neurotransmitter biosynthesis. However, several key nutrients are missing from these sources, or they are somewhat limited in these foods. This includes vitamin C, as well as omega-3 fatty acids, unless you're consuming enriched eggs or milk. Fiber is often reduced. We did talk about that a little bit. Make sure you consume some of those refined breads. And of course, phytochemicals. Now, what are phytochemicals? Phytochemicals are natural bioactive compounds that are present in the fruits and vegetables, as well as grains and nuts. And these provide color, flavor, and plant protection. Um, uh, and they also offer significant human health benefits. The benefit is they mainly act as antioxidants. This helps to reduce chronic disease risk factors, preventing DNA damage, combating cancer, and supporting immune system function. So, overall, eggs, bread, and milk are not ideal in the long term as survival foods, but biochemically they form a familiar, culturally reinforced trio that supports energy metabolism, provides complete protein, and covers many, but not all, of the essential vitamins and minerals. So we often see eggs, bread, and milk mentioned prior to severe weather, especially in the United States Southeast. This is mainly due to a mix of practical habits, regional infrastructure, as well as cultural memory, rather than a logic about these specific foods. So here's what's really going on. First, let's consider that storms in the south will disrupt literally everything. Emphasis on everything. And it can happen rather quickly. This is because the southern states lack infrastructure to handle winter weather. There's few snowplows or salt trucks. Roads and bridges ice over rapidly. Schools, offices, stores will close early. Power outages are more common due to ice on trees and power lines. Even a small amount of snow or ice can mean people can't drive for a day or two. And actually, I should emphasize that ice is probably the bigger problem than snow, because that can disrupt transportation a lot. And so the instinct is to stock up on short-term essentials. Nobody wants to go without your essential nutrients that you need, right? So eggs, bread, and milk are also default staple foods. They're common in just about every household. And that's because they're easy to use in many meals. They're easy to prepare. They're used to make familiar comfort foods. This includes breakfast foods like eggs, toast, French toast, pancakes. You can whip these up fairly simple, fairly easy. You're also looking for simple meals for kids. The kids will probably be home from school due to weather for a few days. You're also looking for warm, familiar foods during stressful weather, such as grits. Southern cooking habits also matter a lot. In many Southern households, eggs, bread, and milk are used for things like biscuits, cornbread. I've already mentioned grits, and these batter-based foods. So running out kind of feels more destructive than, say, running out of pasta or canned beans. They're not exactly strategically optimal, but they're mentally associated with being prepared. And so everyone likes to be prepared. That's the Boy Scouts model, right? Be prepared. There's often the strong cultural memory of milk and bread and egg shortages during past winter storms. Many people may remember, or maybe you've heard stories about the storm of the century back in 1993. We're in the new century now. But there's also the 1998 Christmas Eve ice storm. I remember being in Virginia during that one. Of course, who can forget Snowmageddon in 2010 and Snowpocalypse in 2014? And I think those two terms are often reused over and over again, ad nauseum. So these are times when stores closed unexpectedly. Delivery trucks couldn't reach stores. Shelves actually were empty for a day or two, maybe even a week. These memories get passed down. This reinforces the idea that when bad weather hits, you better get your milk and bread and eggs, right? It becomes a learned community response as opposed to a rational calculation. So snow is rare in the southern states, so anxiety of higher is much higher. Northern cities such as Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Minneapolis, Green Bay, they thrive on winter weather, in fact. Football in January at Lambeau Field in minus 10-degree weather between the Bears and the Packers will be enjoyed by both teams equally. And they'll still tailgate in the parking lot. Bears and Packers fans together, even though they hate each other's guts. Yes, Packers suck. But you still have fun. You tailgate, it's minus 10 degrees, you watch a good football game, and hopefully the Bears still win, right? But it's different in southern states. Yes, they do like football. The SEC is powerful here. But winter storms are infrequent, so there's a lot more uncertainty. Plus, college football, they're going to be playing in the a little bit later, a little further south. So common questions among residents when it snows include, how long is this going to last? Will roads be passable tomorrow? What if stores close? People respond to that uncertainty by buying what they recognize, not what's logically optimal. Yes, logic goes out the window. So what we see now in social media and on TV is hard behavior and visual cues. Once people see empty milk cases, bare shelves, news footage of the crowds and utter pandemonium, this triggers a feedback loop. If everyone else is buying it, I should buy that too. This amplifies the demand for a few items instead of spreading it out evenly. It's also really good if you own stock in stores like Kroger and Publix. Stock tip of the day. But, it's really weird because the irony, and this is why it's hilarious, is that, oddly enough, eggs, bread, and milk are going to spoil more quickly because they require electricity to store and to cook. And so they're not really ideal for multi-day outages. Yet somehow they're symbolic as the storm survival kit in the South. So Southerners are buying eggs, bread, and milk before the winter storms because winter weather causes disproportionate disruption. These foods represent normalcy and comfort, cultural habits, and you get a shared memory drive behavior. And so fear and herd dynamics override logic, and it's less about nutrition and survival and more about psychology and tradition. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you learned a little bit of something about the nutritive sources in the nutrients present in eggs, bread, and milk. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button down below, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and maybe hit the bell icon if you want to be updated on more fun videos that I keep posting here. And leave a message down in the comments below about some of your experiences through these winter storms. And hopefully, hit the like button as well. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.